We're here with Amartine of AfriKids to talk about how AfriKids works with their partners.
Hi Emma. Let's start with just finding out how your organisation, AfriKids, attracts and maintains partnerships with government and community stakeholders as well as international NGOs.
We're in quite a unique position as a charity because we only have one partner in Ghana, and they're based in northern Ghana, and their head office is there as well in the Upper East region in Bolgatanga. So they're firmly rooted in the communities that they work in. Almost all of them are local to the Upper East region, so they grew up there, they went to school there, and they work there, and they give back to their communities. We don't have a head office in Accra, which means that we're on the doorstep of all our beneficiaries in the communities that we work with and support, and that means also we've been able to build really close relationships with government stakeholders and community stakeholders like Ghana Education Service, Ghana Health Service, Department of Social Welfare, etc. We've got long-standing relationships with them. We know what they want to be doing in terms of policy, but we're helping them bring it into practice. A lot of the community stakeholders and government stakeholders that we work with resource poor, so it's very difficult for them to implement policies and things that they want to. So we build their capacity and enable them to do that. So for us, it's not necessarily an issue of attracting them, because actually we have long-standing relationships with them. We're a household name in the Upper East region and in the Northern region, in fact, in the 3 northern regions, and we're a go-to agency if stakeholders want to get something done or have concerns, or there is a particular theme or issue like sexual and reproductive health and rights that they want to address.
And is your team responsible for creating these partnerships?
Yes, so just to give you a bit of context, our setup is that in the UK we are the fundraising arm of the organisation, and AfriKids Ghana are the programmes arm of the organisation. So they manage and deliver all of the projects, and they are responsible for building those relationships and connecting with the different stakeholders out in Ghana. But like I say, it's fairly organic, it's fairly natural, because we've been there for a long time. AfriKids Ghana registered as a charity in 2005, AfriKids UK in 2002, and before that we'd already been doing grassroots work since 1998. And many of those individuals who we used to call local heroes that we worked with already had projects that they were running, and therefore were building relationships with communities and stakeholders. So it's been a really natural journey for us, and not one that has been, right, we need to build a relationship with Ghana Education Service. But over the years we've grown together. So in the very early days we built a school, not something we do very often, but we had a school in a small community called Zirungu, and the community worked with us, community stakeholders. They gave us the land, and so very close relationship in terms of how the school was run and how we worked with the community, and how the community were able to use the centre as a hub for their community. Now the school's been mainstream, so it's actually been absorbed by Ghana Education Service. So even in just that journey, we've had to build a really strong relationship with Ghana Education Service to be able to hand over the school. We're looking at bigger projects, like ones that are about bringing about systemic change. So for example, we work with 60 schools to improve enrolment, pass and retention rates, and we work with Ghana Education Service, so they select the schools. So we're able to just go to them and go, right, these are the ideas, we know these are the concerns you have, which schools would you like us to work with? And then we're able to build the project and go and get funding.
So that's a great example of why it's important to work with government stakeholders.
Yeah.
Then you can generate those kind of relationships, yes, and improve sustainability of the project in the long
Absolutely.
term.
And we expect that with all of our projects, whether it's with Ghana Education Services or any of our other community or governmental stakeholders, we expect that they need to be able to sustain it after an intervention's finished. So that's why working with them from the very beginning and then being part of the consultation process and the design process is absolutely imperative for us, because it means then they're able to institute changes that we put into place far beyond the end of the project. And that's just down to basic things about, sometimes down to basic things about how we run things like school management committees, or how they work. Ghana Education Service staff like circuit supervisors can work with the actual head teachers in schools to make sure that they're able to meet their objectives.
So you've been working with these institutions for some years. How often do you meet with the bodies? How often do you engage with them and talk through the issues that you've found?
AfriKids Ghana would meet with them really regularly, actually. There's formal and there's informal. So formally, for a project like the one I mentioned where we're working to improve retention, pass and enrolment rates, when we first started the project, they would have met monthly to discuss issues and to make sure the project's on track and to find the right support for the schools. And as the project comes towards an end, it might reduce, it might be every 3 months or biannually, but meanwhile, in addition to that, they will be conversing informally The field workers will also be working with Ghana Education Service constantly because, for example, if we're collecting data on how our schools have done, we actually work with Ghana Education Service to make sure that they can collect good, strong data, and then we would go and collect it from them, but we've done a lot of work with them in the run-up.
So you're probably working with a lot of international NGOs. Can you tell us about your experience and who you're working with and how it's worked so far?
We work with a number of other international organisations. So one of them, for example, is Save Trust. We have a partnership with them for a Comet Relief funded project that we have, which is all about early years education. So that's been a really interesting partnership because we've been able to replicate their model, learn from them. They've been able to also cascade their model as well to other regions where they wouldn't necessarily have worked otherwise. And then we've been able to add a bit of an AfriKids stamp. We've just started a new partnership with NSPCC, which again is really exciting. So looking at sexual exploitation and child trafficking.
And did they approach you?
NSPCC, for a funder actually. So a funder introduced us to Theatres for a Change, Medical Foundation, they introduced us to Theatres for a Change, and we've just been talking about how we might be able to collaborate. And then there's projects like with UNICEF, which initially start in more traditional fashion, so applying for a grant or an opportunity and then developing the project from there. So the partnerships happen in very different ways, just depending on what the opportunity is, but constantly talking to people. We work with community-based rehabilitation in Ghana who specialise in rehabilitation for children with conditions like cerebral palsy, and that actually they contribute massively to projects that are disability projects, but also for projects for the spirit child phenomenon, which is a really big issue that we've been dealing with for a number of years, which often leads to infanticide, abuse and neglect because children are viewed to be spirits that have come from another life, and often that coincides with disability or medical condition. So it's been really interesting to work with partners like community-based rehabilitation because there are very few specialists in northern Ghana that can provide that kind of specialist treatment for children.
So what would your advice be to other grant holders in creating partnerships? Talk to people?
Yeah, I think my advice would be just constantly talking. A lot of the relationships we have come from just talking and networking and connecting with organisations that are doing similar work, or that we can complement their work, or that they can complement our work, or that we can scale up their work and they can scale up an aspect of ours. So it really is just constantly talking to people. Many of the relationships have just come from connections to...
And it seems like your reputation is also something that's really helping. If people are coming to you and wanting to work with you.
And we were recently contacted by the Canadian High Commission in Ghana because they've got funds for an SRHR project, and they've been to the north and were scoping out, meeting other NGOs and organisations working there, and then of course meeting community stakeholders and people. Everybody's like, have you spoken to AfriKids? Right. So naturally they then got in contact with us.
So let's talk about the advantages that you found with partnering with other international organisations. And then following on from that, how do you avoid duplicating the work that other NGOs are doing?
The advantages are that we can not duplicate work and that we can learn from each other. The Sabre model is really unique, and it's a privilege to be able to run with it and develop it, but then also to be able to add to it and make it appropriate for the regions and the communities that we work with. That's the benefit. We might not have designed a project like that. We're able to not duplicate, but also we're able to fill gaps. And even with our project funded by DFID for our sexual reproductive health rights programme, Ghana Health Services flagged up that actually another big NGO were going to be delivering SRHR work in our traditional communities, the communities we worked in for a really long time. So we had to move to other communities, which had an impact on our project and in terms of delivery, because actually now we spend more on fuel, for example, because we have to drive out to communities further away, but actually it's been really interesting because we've been able to build new relationships with new communities as well. But
do you think that came about because you've got a very strong relationship with government at the local level, that you work very closely with them, so they were able to say,
can you move?
Can you move?
Can you move and go to other communities?
And here's a gap.
But again, that comes from us having really strong relationships with each other. They don't want to see us duplicating the same work either.
No,
it's not in the best interest of the communities that we work with. So absolutely. Ghana Education Service and, for example, are able to say to us, actually, rather than focusing on these target communities, can you focus on these these guys, because actually the indicator is much poorer than over here, and that means then we can target our work where it's most needed.
So you're reaching those who are most in need, the most vulnerable.
Yeah.
That you've got the government backing then because you're supporting government policy.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your approach to communities, you say that's probably one of the most important elements of making a programme work in your experience. How do you work with communities, and what role does respect play?
Well, it's always consulting them, isn't it? I think it's really just constantly having a conversation with them and making sure that their views are heard, and then developing projects that respond to what they actually want. So our SRHR interventions have come about because actually we were working in mining communities, and we had done a lot to get kids out of the mines in those communities, and the women and the community leaders said to us, well, we really need to address this issue of child marriage. All our girls are getting married really young, and actually what does this mean for the future? So even this project is in response to that, and it kind of grows off the back of something else. It keeps cascading and growing and just constantly responding to what people want. And then actually when you start to you pick up on an idea of they've given you the seed, and then you start to explore it even more, and you realise that there's loads more to be done. Is there anywhere for adolescents to go to get sexual reproductive health advice and things? No. So yeah, it's certainly a bit more, I keep using the word organic.
Well, thanks, Emma. I think what's clear from this discussion is that it's really important to have partnerships at all sorts of different levels, starting with the community, chiefs, the local elders, understanding what their needs are, rather than going in with a preconceived idea of delivering something.
And you just consult them, and you have a conversation, and you just constantly keep talking. I keep saying that as if it's all we do, but it really is the basis. It's key for everything. Yeah, just communicating. And you're looking for people that have an expertise or knowledge about something that you don't necessarily have. You know,